welcome to Stories of Hope. This is a new episode featuring a brand new story. So in the past episodes, we've been featuring extended interviews from the documentary Gateway to Hope, Overcoming Heroin, which if you haven't had the chance to check out, you can head on over to Amazon Prime and watch it there. So Elizabeth lives in the North Carolina area, and she was back in Pittsburgh to visit her family a couple of weekends ago. So I had the opportunity to hear her story and hear her addiction, and then ultimately the hope that brought her through that. So if you're joining us for the first time, please subscribe below so that you can get notified on the second part of this episode. Also, if you'd like to be featured on Stories of Hope, please send us an email at realstoriesofhope@gmail.com. Thank you.
So I grew up in a good Christian home with both of my parents, and they had me in church every Sunday and every Wednesday when the doors were open. I was involved in youth groups. I was a good kid. I made good grades. I did everything, the right way. No issues really. We moved around a lot when I was a kid, but again, I had really great parents and a great support system through them. So I met him when I was 15 years old, and from that point it was a toxic relationship, something that should have never been. I was being deceitful about from the beginning with him, and sneaking around to see him, and it just was not healthy at all. And I kept pursuing it because I felt like that was true love. That's what I was supposed to be with, who I was supposed to be with. So 2 years after we were married, I got pregnant and we had our son, and we were both really just over the moon because of that, because we both wanted children, and things were just going really well. He was working, he had a good job. I was finished school and I was working, and I had a good job also, and we were involved in church and just doing things that a young family should do. And when our son was 2 years old, things started to turn south, and I noticed that money would come up missing. My husband would go missing for days on end, and I found out that he had been using drugs. And I tried really hard to make my marriage work, because that's really all I ever wanted in my life, was to be married and have kids and just grow old with my husband and raise kids. That's all I wanted. And so kind of all my hopes and dreams were dashed when I found out that. And I tried so hard, and things got really violent towards the end of that. And this went on for about a year, and it was really toxic. And so it was at that point I decided that this cannot go on anymore. So I told him, he needs to go and get help, or our marriage is not going to last. So he left, and when he left, he took a piece of me with him, and that was the hardest thing that I probably ever went through at that time, because I felt like I had been with this man since I was 15, and that's all I'd ever known, and he was all I ever wanted. And it was such a drive, to make that work, but it just didn't. And I fell into a depression after that, and it was a hard time to make it financially, and also raise my son alone, and hearing my son cry for his father every night, it was really difficult. So I had been given pain pills prescribed to me for my back, and also for an anxiety and depression medication, because I was just having a hard time with my husband leaving. So I started abusing those, and taking more and more than I should, just to feel numb, just to not feel anything at all, or feel the hurt or the pain associated with all that. So it really got out of hand. And so someone introduced heroin to me for the first time, and I started using that. And that's when everything changed in addiction for me, and nothing else became more important than that. And I would do anything to get it, whether that meant, stealing, being manipulative, whatever I had to do. That was the only thing that mattered, and I was bound at that point. So I had ran on for a long time in that kind of lifestyle, and stealing from my mom and dad, and get into arguments with them, and that relationship was totally strained at that point, and just not being the mom that I should be for my son, and being away from him because I was so wrapped up in this addiction and so absorbed in that lifestyle. And you know, I would get pulled over and get searched, and I just finally came to an end of myself. And one morning my mom called me and she said that the cops had been at their house looking for me, and I turned myself in and I found out that I was wanted for 6 felonies for drug distribution. So that kind of shook me up, shook my world up, and I kind of just came to this point where I thought about myself. I was so ashamed of myself of what I had become, and I hated myself. I hated everything that I had become because I felt like everything that destroyed my marriage and my whole family dynamic, that's what I now was, and I hated it, and I wanted change. More than anything, I was desperate for it. So after I had got in the court system, I not required to go, but my lawyer suggested that I attend some NA meetings and just kind of show effort that I was trying to help myself. So I did that. I went to NA meetings, and you know, to try to get help and get off drugs, the best idea is probably not going and sitting in a circle and talking about getting high. That's just not effective. So I did that just to get my court paper signed and say I was there. And I also went to the methadone clinic, and that did not work for me either, because I would go every morning and get dosed, and then I would go and get high. So, you know, I complied with the courts and what I had to do, but it was not effective for me at all.